Julian's abuse of power is established from the very first confrontation, where authority is used not to manage a situation fairly but to dominate and humiliate someone vulnerable. The elderly woman arrives with a valid reservation, calm and respectful, yet Julian immediately dismisses her presence as a threat to his personal ambitions. His language is aggressive and demeaning, reducing her to an inconvenience rather than acknowledging her humanity. The fact that she requires an oxygen tank becomes, in his eyes, an unacceptable flaw rather than a medical necessity, revealing how deeply he equates worth with visual perfection. His power is not exercised with responsibility, but with entitlement, treating the restaurant as a stage for his ego rather than a place meant to serve people. What makes Julian's behavior especially disturbing is how he justifies cruelty through professional pressure. He frames the situation as a necessary sacrifice for his career, claiming that a single night, a single critic, and a single image matter more than a person's safety or dignity. By doing so, he shifts blame away from himself and onto circumstance, as if ambition excuses inhumanity. He refuses to explain himself, shuts down conversation, and repeatedly threatens consequences, including calling the police, to enforce obedience. Power, in his hands, becomes a weapon used to silence rather than to lead. Julian's fixation on appearances exposes the hollowness of his values. Every detail of the restaurant is described as curated and perfected. Yet this obsession with surface-level beauty contrasts sharply with the ugliness of his behavior. He speaks of elevating cuisine into an experience, but his actions degrade the very meaning of hospitality. By labeling the woman and her oxygen tank as an eyesore, he reveals a worldview where anything that disrupts his illusion of perfection must be erased. This mindset strips people of identity and reduces them to objects that either enhance or damage his image. Ultimately, Julian's abuse of power reflects a deeper moral failure. He believes control equals competence and authority equals superiority. His willingness to throw a defenseless person into a storm demonstrates how power without empathy becomes cruelty. Rather than protecting the integrity of the restaurant, his actions expose its emptiness, showing that success built on humiliation and fear is fundamentally rotten. Eleanor's role in the story represents quiet moral courage in the face of intimidation and authority. Unlike Julian, she does not see the elderly woman as a problem to be removed, but as a human being deserving of dignity and care. From the moment she intervenes, her tone and behavior show empathy, patience, and respect. She questions the situation calmly, trying to understand why someone with a valid reservation is being treated so harshly, even when she is clearly aware of the professional risk involved. She does not immediately retreat or comply without thought. Her instinct is to protect, not to impress. What defines Eleanor's courage is that it is not loud or dramatic. She does not shout, threaten, or posture. Instead, she chooses small but meaningful acts of kindness, such as offering the woman a place to sit and shielding her from the worsening storm outside. These actions may seem minor, but in a power-driven environment like the restaurant, they are acts of resistance. Eleanor understands the importance of the critic and the pressure of the evening, yet she refuses to let those factors override her sense of right and wrong. She recognizes that professionalism does not require cruelty, and success does not justify harm. When Julian escalates the situation, Eleanor remains composed, even as he insults her and questions her loyalty. She is forced into an impossible position, where obedience means participating in something she knows is wrong. Her decision to stand her ground ultimately costs her job, but the loss does not shake her belief that she did the right thing. This moment reveals her strength of character. She values integrity over approval and compassion over status. Even after being fired, she shows no bitterness toward the woman involved, reassuring her and taking responsibility for her own choices. Eleanor's actions highlight the idea that true professionalism includes humanity. She does not need authority or recognition to act ethically. Her courage lies in choosing decency when it is inconvenient and costly. By prioritizing kindness over ambition, she becomes the moral center of the story, proving that real strength is shown not in control, but in compassion. Julian represents the destructive side of ambition, when image and success are valued more than people. His character is driven by fear of failure and an obsessive need for control, which shapes every decision he makes throughout the story. To him, the restaurant is not a place of hospitality, but a stage where perfection must be performed at any cost. The arrival of a powerful critic becomes an excuse for him to abandon basic human decency. He reduces a vulnerable elderly woman to an object, calling her presence an eyesore, as if her humanity can be measured by how well she fits the decor. Julian's behavior shows how power can distort judgment. He believes his role gives him the right to command, threaten, and humiliate others, including his own staff. His language is harsh and demeaning, revealing how disconnected he is from empathy. Instead of seeing Eleanor's concern as loyalty to the restaurant's values, he interprets it as insubordination. This inability to tolerate compassion exposes his insecurity. He fears that anything he cannot control will expose him as inadequate, so he responds with aggression and cruelty. What makes Julian particularly flawed is his obsession with appearances over substance. He claims to protect the restaurant's image, yet his actions do the opposite, forcing out an elderly woman, threatening police involvement, and firing an employee in public all demonstrate a lack of true professionalism. He mistakes fear for respect and obedience for excellence. His fixation on the critic blinds him to the larger truth that integrity is what sustains a reputation, not intimidation or cruelty. Julian's downfall comes when his carefully constructed image collapses under scrutiny. When it is revealed that the elderly woman is the critic's mother, his hypocrisy and abuse of power are exposed. The very person he tried to impress becomes the witness to his worst behavior. In that moment, Julian is no longer the gatekeeper of perfection, but the embodiment of everything wrong with his approach. His firing is not just a punishment, but a consequence of his choices. He loses his position because he never understood that leadership without humanity is ultimately empty and unsustainable. The elderly woman in the story symbolizes dignity, patience, and quiet strength in the face of disrespect. Despite being treated unfairly, she never raises her voice or responds with anger. From the beginning, she speaks calmly, explaining that she has a reservation and simply wants to wait for her son to arrive. Her words are polite and reasonable, highlighting the injustice of the situation. Even when she is ordered to leave and made to feel unwelcome, she maintains her composure, showing grace under pressure. Her vulnerability is clear, especially through her reliance on an oxygen tank and her need for assistance with transportation. These details make Julian's actions even more disturbing, as they reveal his willingness to prioritize aesthetics over human life and comfort. Yet the woman does not use her condition to demand sympathy. Instead, she accepts what is happening with quiet sadness rather than confrontation. This restraint emphasizes her inner strength and self-respect. She understands what is being done to her is wrong, but she refuses to let cruelty define her response. The woman's interaction with Eleanor reveals her empathy and emotional intelligence. She reassures Eleanor that the situation is not her fault and even apologizes for causing trouble. Despite being the victim, this reversal of concern shows her deep kindness and awareness of others. She does not cling to resentment or blame, but instead focuses on easing the emotional burden of the person trying to help her. Her gratitude is sincere, and her willingness to accept help without pride or shame makes her presence deeply human. The reveal of her identity as the critic's mother transforms her role in the story without changing who she is. She does not seek revenge or public humiliation. Her power lies not in her connection, but in her character. By simply existing as herself, she exposes the moral failure of those who judged her by appearance alone. Her dignity contrasts sharply with Julian's cruelty, reinforcing the message that worth is not determined by status, health, or how well someone fits an image, but by humanity and respect. The resolution of the story reinforces the idea that integrity ultimately outweighs image and power. When the truth comes to light, the restaurant's leadership is forced to confront the consequences of the choices made that evening. Julian's belief that he was protecting the restaurant collapses instantly once his actions are examined through a moral lens. The critic's response is not driven by personal offense alone, but by a clear understanding of abuse of power and misplaced priorities. What matters most in that moment is not Dacre, reputation, or influence, but how people are treated when no one thinks it will matter. Eleanor's role in the resolution highlights how doing the right thing can open unexpected paths. Although she loses her job initially, her compassion and integrity are recognized and rewarded in a far more meaningful way. She is acknowledged publicly for standing up for what was right, and her values are affirmed by those who truly understand leadership. The offer for her to take on a new role is not just professional advancement, but validation that kindness and ethics belong at the center of any successful institution. Her journey shows that character can shape destiny more powerfully than ambition. The downfall of Julian is swift and deserved, but it is not portrayed as triumphant revenge. Instead, it feels like a natural outcome of his behavior. He is exposed as someone who mistook control for leadership and fear for respect. His removal serves as a reminder that authority without accountability cannot last. The very standards he claimed to protect are the ones he violated, and he is held responsible for that contradiction. The final moments of the story leave a lasting message about legacy. Reputations built on cruelty and image eventually crumble, while those built on empathy and integrity endure. The restaurant's future is reshaped by values rather than vanity, and the audience is left with a clear understanding that success means little if it comes at the cost of humanity. Power reveals character. Kindness reveals strength. Those who choose integrity will always rise in the end. Like, comment, subscribe for more powerful moral stories.